There is a $20 bottle of Scotch sitting on the shelf at Trader Joe's right now. The company that makes it will not tell you which distillery it comes from. Whiskey experts have spent over a decade arguing about it. And the founder of the company that bottles it used to be the director of one of the most famous distilleries in Scotland. That is not a coincidence. And it is not the only bottle hiding in plain sight. Every year, millions of bottles of Scotch whisky are sold under names that do not belong to any distillery. Kirkland at Costco, Glenmarnock at Aldi, Aberchan at Lidl, Ben Bracken, Finlaggan, Glenbridge. None of these distilleries exist. The names are invented. The labels are designed to look traditional, and the whiskey inside could be coming from some of the most respected distilleries in Scotland. The Scotch whisky industry runs on a system that almost nobody outside of it talks about. It is called the brokerage market, and once you understand how it works, you will never look at a supermarket whiskey shelf the same way again. Here is how the machine operates. Scotland has over 150 working distilleries. The vast majority of them produce more whiskey than they can sell under their own label. That surplus has to go somewhere. Some of it goes into blends, such as Johnnie Walker, Chivas Regal, and Famous Grouse. These blended scotches are built from dozens of different distillery outputs mixed together. That is common knowledge. What is less well known is what happens to the rest of the surplus. Distilleries sell excess casks to brokers. These are specialist middlemen who buy whiskey in bulk, store it in bonded warehouses, and sell it on to whoever needs it. Independent bottlers, private label producers, and increasingly, supermarkets. The brokers connect supply with demand across the entire industry. They have done this for over a century. It is not a loophole or a grey area. It is how Scotch whisky has always worked. And here is why there is always surplus to go around. Scotch whisky takes years to mature. A distillery making whisky today will not sell it for at least 3 years, and often 10 or 12 or more. That means every distillery is constantly guessing what demand will look like a decade from now. Sometimes they guess wrong. The industry has a history of boom and bust cycles, what insiders call the whiskey loch, where overproduction creates a flood of available stock. During these periods, brokers and private label producers can access exceptional whiskey at prices that would make the branded distilleries wince. The quality of supermarket own label Scotch has improved dramatically in recent years, and the oversupply cycles are a big reason why. The reason this matters is simple. When a distillery sells a cask to a broker, the whiskey inside does not change. A cask of 12-year-old Speyside single malt is the same liquid whether it ends up in a $70 bottle with a famous name on the label or a $20 bottle with a name nobody recognizes. The only difference is the label, the marketing budget, and the margin. Now, let us talk about who is actually taking advantage of this system. Start with Costco. Their Kirkland Signature Scotch range is one of the most talked about private label spirits programs in the world. Every bottle is sourced through a company called Alexander Murray & Company, based in Calabasas, California. Alexander Murray has been supplying Costco since 2007. They are not a distillery. They are an independent bottler that sources whiskey from around 12 different Scottish distilleries, blends or bottles it, and ships it to Costco. They move over 100,000 cases per year just for the Kirkland label. The Kirkland lineup has included blended Scotch, a 12-year-old blend, single malts from Speyside, peated single malts from the Scottish Islands, and aged expressions going up to 22 and 23 years old. Each bottle lists the region and the cask type. What it does not list is the distillery, and that is where the detective work starts. The Kirkland blended Scotch has been compared by expert tasters to Dewar's White Label. One bartender who did a professional blind tasting for Thrillist said the two were nearly identical. The leading theory is that the blend contains whiskey from Bacardi's portfolio, which owns Dewar's. The Kirkland Speyside 20-year-old has been linked by whiskey community investigators to Glenrothes. Tasting notes, bottle comparisons, and flavour profiles all line up with authenticated Glenrothes expressions. The peated single malt has the internet split between Ceol Ila, which is one of the most commonly used distilleries for independent bottlings, and Port Charlotte, which is made by Brokerage. Brookladdy, for those wondering how to say it. Here is the part that should make you pay attention. Costco previously sold a Macallan's single malt under the Kirkland label with the distillery name printed right on the bottle. That was not a secret. Then at some point, the partnership ended and everything went behind closed doors. The quality did not necessarily drop. The transparency did. Now we move to Trader Joe's. Their prize bottle is called Finlaggan. It is a peated single malt that sells for around $18 to $20 depending on where you are. For reference, a bottle of Lagavulin 16, which is one of the benchmark peated scotches, costs around $90 to $120. Finlaggan is made by a company called the Vintage Malt Whisky Company. They have maintained one of the tightest silences in the industry about which distillery the whiskey comes from. The only public statement they have ever made is that Finlaggan has always come from the same distillery, and always will. That has not stopped people from trying to figure it out. The whiskey community has debated this for over a decade. The main suspects are Lagavulin, Bowmore, Cale, Hiller, and Laphroaig. Each has its defenders. The Bowmore theory picked up serious traction when people discovered that the founder of the Vintage Malt Whisky Company, Brian Cook, used to be the director of Morrison Bowmore Distillers before starting his own company. That is a direct professional connection to one of the suspect distilleries. One whiskey reviewer on YouTube proposed that Finlaggan might actually be one distillery's malt aged in another distillery's used barrels. Young Lagavulin in old Cale Ela casks would explain why the flavour profile does not perfectly match any single known distillery. Whatever the truth is, at $18, blind tasters have consistently ranked it alongside scotches costing 3 to 5 times more. One reviewer called it the $2 chuck of peated scotch. Except unlike cheap wine, this one actually holds up against the competition. Trader Joe's has also carried single malts from other regions under their own store brand, with the distillery name right on the label. These have included bottles from Ardmore, Glenallachie, and Glenmoray for around $30. For anyone who has bought a branded bottle of Ardmore or Glenallachie at full retail, that price difference stings. Now here is where the story gets even more interesting. Aldi. The German discount chain has been quietly building one of the most aggressive supermarket whiskey programs in the world. Their main brand is called Glenmarnock. Look for Glenmarnock on a map and you will search forever. There is no such place, no distillery, no Glen. The name was invented to sound Scottish. Aldi has released Glenmarnock as a no-age statement single malt in Highland Speyside and Peated Island editions, plus aged versions going up to 12, 18, 24 and 28 years old. The distilleries behind each expression are never disclosed. Suspects have included Dalmore, Glendronach and Glenmoray, but nothing has ever been confirmed. Then in December 2011, Aldi did something that caused actual queues outside their stores in the United Kingdom. They released a bottle called Glenbridge, a 40-year-old Speyside single malt. The price was £49.99, just under £50 for a 40-year-old single malt. For context, a 40-year-old single malt from a recognised distillery typically costs several hundred to several thousand pounds. Aldi released 3,000 bottles. Every single one sold out. Some stores had people lining up before dawn. Bottles immediately appeared on eBay for £300 and up. Nobody has ever confirmed which distillery the Glenbridge came from. The whiskey was Speyside, sherry influenced, and rumoured to be worth over £300 at a minimum. The usual suspects were floated. Macallan was suggested and largely ruled out based on taste, and the fact that nobody could reasonably sell Macallan at that price without taking a massive loss. Aberlour was proposed based on flavour similarities with their 15-year-old. Beyond that, it could be any of the dozens of Speyside distilleries with enough aging stock to spare without it being missed from their own bottlings. The truth remains buried, and it probably always will, because the contracts between brokers and distilleries include strict non-disclosure agreements. What came before the Glenbridge was almost as impressive. A month earlier, Aldi had released a 24-year-old Highland single malt under the Glenmarnock label for £29.99. In the years that followed, they kept going, a 28-year-old, then a 30-year-old. Each time, queues formed and bottles vanished within hours. Quick thing before we continue. The data on this channel shows that over 80% of you watching right now are not subscribed. That means you are showing up for the content, but the algorithm has no reason to show you the next video. If you have made it this far, you clearly care about what you are putting in your glass. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. That is the key detail that holds this entire system together. Distilleries do not want you to know they are supplying supermarkets. Think about it from their perspective. If you found out that the same liquid in a $70 Dalmore bottle was also inside a $20 Glenmarnock at Aldi, why would you ever buy the Dalmore again? The distillery's entire pricing structure depends on the perception that their branded product is fundamentally different from what you can get at a discount retailer. The secrecy is not about protecting the supermarket, it is about protecting the brand. Some distilleries go further than just staying quiet. Certain producers actively prohibit the use of their brand name on any independent or private label bottle. Glenfiddich, Balvenie, Glenmorangie and Glenfarclas are all known to enforce these restrictions. If an independent bottler gets hold of their whiskey, it has to be sold as an unnamed Speyside or Highland single malt. The distillery name cannot appear anywhere on the packaging. This has created an entire category of what the industry calls secret bottlings, where everyone involved knows which distillery the whiskey came from, but nobody is legally allowed to say it out loud. Now let us look at Lidl. Their Scotch programme includes Ben Bracken's single malts from Speyside, Highland and the peated Scottish Islands, plus a blended malt called Abercan and a blended Scotch called Queen Margot. The Abercan is bottled by Clydesdale Scotch Whisky Company, which is a subsidiary of White and Mackay. That connection matters because White and Mackay owns Dalmore, Jura, Fettercairn and Tamna Vulin. Whiskey analysts have speculated that the Abercan blend likely draws from the less commercially prominent distilleries in that portfolio, particularly Fettercairn and Tamna Vulin, which produce excellent whiskey but do not carry the premium price tag of a Dalmore. The Abercan sells for around £16 and has won awards in blind tasting competitions, beating out bottles costing 2 and 3 times more. That connection helps explain why. And this is not just a discount retailer phenomenon. In the United Kingdom, Tesco has sold own-label 12-year-old Highland and Speyside single malts produced by White and Mackay, with the signature of their master blender, Richard Patterson, on the bottle. The same Richard Patterson whose name is associated with Dalmore, one of the most premium single malt brands in the world, even signed off on a Tesco own-label bottle. Ian MacLeod Distillers, who own Glengoyne and Rosebank, have been supplying own-label spirits to European supermarkets for over 60 years through brands like Shield Egg. They were one of the first companies to build a business model around it. Tesco and Ian MacLeod were pioneers in that space. The supply chain goes even deeper than individual retailers. Alexander Murray, the company behind Costco's Kirkland Scotch, also supplies Trader Joe's and Walmart. That means 3 of the largest retailers in the world are potentially selling whiskey from the same pool of Scottish distilleries, each under a completely different brand name at 3 different price points. Same broker, same sources, different labels. What makes all of this possible is the economics of Scotch whiskey production. When you buy a bottle of branded single malt from a well-known distillery, a significant chunk of what you are paying has nothing to do with the liquid. You are paying for the distillery visitor centre, the global advertising campaigns, the celebrity endorsements, the fancy box, the distribution network, the sales team, the shelf placement fees at premium retailers, the sponsorship deals with golf tournaments and Formula One teams. One industry estimate suggests that the actual cost of the whiskey inside a $40 bottle of branded single malt is somewhere between $3 and $8. The rest is markup, margin, and marketing. Consider what that means in practical terms. A distillery produces a batch of 12-year-old single malt. Some of it goes into their branded bottles with the nice packaging and the heritage story on the back. Those bottles retail for $60 to $80. The casks that did not make the cut for the flagship range or the surplus beyond what the brand can sell get moved through the brokerage network. A supermarket picks them up, bottles them under an invented name, and puts them on the shelf for $20. The liquid came from the same stills. It aged in the same warehouses. It just did not get picked for the team photo. When a supermarket buys whiskey through a broker and bottles it under their own label, they skip almost all of that overhead. No visitor center to maintain, no advertising budget, no brand ambassador flying around the world doing tastings. The savings go straight to the price tag. That is why Costco can sell a 20-year-old single malt for $50 to $60, while the same age statement from a branded distillery costs $150 or more. This does not mean every supermarket Scotch is secretly premium. Plenty of own-label bottles contain young, unremarkable whiskey that was sold off precisely because it was not good enough for the distillery's own range. The lack of an age statement on many supermarket bottles is a strong hint that the whiskey inside is relatively young, often in the 3 to 6 year range. And chill filtration, caramel colouring, and low bottling strength are still common in the budget space. The trick is knowing what to look for. Age statements are the most obvious indicator of quality. A 16-pound bottle with a 12-year age statement from Aldi is almost certainly a better bet than a 16-pound bottle with no age statement from anywhere. Higher alcohol content matters too. Anything bottled at 43% or above suggests the producer cared enough to leave more flavour in the glass. And the type of whiskey matters. A blended malt, which is a blend of only single malts from different distilleries with no grain whiskey in the mix, is generally a step above a standard blended Scotch at the same price point. The Scotch industry would prefer you never think about any of this. They would prefer you keep associating price with quality, brand with prestige, and supermarket shelves with compromise. And to be fair, there is a reason brands exist. Consistency. When you buy a bottle of Glenfiddich 12, you know exactly what you are getting every single time. That consistency costs money to maintain and it has real value. But the next time you walk past the spirits aisle at Costco, Aldi, Lidl, or Trader Joe's, take a second look at those unfamiliar bottles with the invented Scottish names. Read the back label. Look for the name of the bottler. Check for an age statement. Look at the alcohol percentage. These small details tell you more about what is inside the bottle than the brand name on the front ever will. And if you really want to test this for yourself, try something. Buy a Kirkland Speyside single malt and a branded Speyside single malt at a similar age statement. Pour them side by side without looking at the labels. See if you can tell which one cost 3 times more. If you cannot, you just saved yourself $50 and you learned something the Scotch industry has been hoping you would never figure out. The whiskey inside might have been made by the same hands, in the same copper stills from the same Scottish water, as the bottle sitting 10 feet away at 4 times the price. The only difference is that nobody is allowed to tell you. If you found this one interesting, subscribe. More coming soon.